All right, hey everybody. I have another. It's pretty much doing another first reaction for Netflix's The Big Show, starring The Big Show. Yo, dog, I hear you like big shows, so here's a big show about The Big Show. Um, so it's a Netflix comedy that released, I think earlier April, like April 6th, so fairly recently. It stars the WWE's own Paul White, aka The Big Show. And it's about pretty much his life after it's a fictionalized version of his life after retirement from the WWE, but it's not really okay. Man, where do I begin with this show? So, as I mentioned before, with a little bit of backstory of me, I'm a wrestling fan, an avid wrestling fan. I know a lot of these older guys like Big Show and stuff like that. Big Show is definitely a very entertaining character, an individual on the show, or within WWE. But there's a lot of stuff about this show to kind of unpackage here. To start let's see, where do I start off? So to start off, let me rate it. I would say I would probably rate it maybe a 2 out of 5. And because the thing is, to boil it down, I kind of don't know who this is intended for. Because if you're a wrestling fan watching this going like, oh, hey, it's The Big Show, let's see what he gets into. It's not really built for wrestling fans because there's not really a whole lot of like, I guess, references to WWE. Like there are some wrestlers that show up on there. For example, there's Mark Henry. He shows up. Mick Foley, hardcore legend Mick Foley shows up. Rikishi Fatu shows up. But it's in weird spots that you just kind of go, why are you here? Like obviously it's just there to kind of fill out the show a little bit. I honestly feel like I think from the production, kind of the production stuff, the WWE is not really involved in this thing whatsoever. It's mainly a Netflix like centric thing. Because they especially do a lot of cross promotion for other Netflix stuff, like they reference, Stranger Things. They had I believe his name is Ton France from Queer Eye makes an appearance on the show, and he gives Big Show's wife, I think, or so, one of the characters a makeover on the show, and that's the last of it, kind of thing. So to start off, I think some of the positives of the show is that some of the characters on the show are pretty good. Big Show is entertaining too, which also another weird thing too is that a kind of another weird thing is that people on the show refer to the Big Show as Big Show. Like they don't call him by his real name. His wife doesn't even call him by his real name. She calls him Big Show, which is kind of odd. And no, no, not what some people think that it's what is going on. But that's another weird thing too, where the guy is, and I remember seeing a trailer for this show, and I knew right off the bat, like you could literally play a drinking game based on a few things, what goes on in this show. And it's whenever there's a moment where Paul White, and I'm just going to refer to him as Paul White, like Big Show, we know who he is. So when Paul White, he breaks something because he's too strong. Like there's going to be times he opens a door and it falls off the hinges because he's so strong, or he punches through something, or you take a shot to that. Take a shot when they put him next to somebody who's little, or take a shot when he's being the stupid dad, like kind of the ignorant dad, like he doesn't understand, kids these days. Oh, I don't know, like I'm just a big old dummy. And it's like a lot of and as I mentioned before, the show is not really made for wrestling fans, but I don't think it's really made for people who like, because when I first saw the trailer, I was hoping it would be something like a Last Man Standing, but rather than Tim Allen, it's Big Show. But it's not cleverly, like the writing is not really that clever a lot of the time. There are some good jokes here and there. they have Jaleel White, aka Urkel, on the show, and yeah, which was kind of surprising. He looks good. And for the most part, they kind of make him kind of the sort of an Urkel-esque character. Like, he's not as nerdy, but he does get into little silly situations. Because he's supposed to be like a family friend who owns a gym, and there's definitely the scene where it's like, okay, he's spotting the Big Show, and the Big Show is, Paul White. I know I fucked up. Anyway, so Big Show's pushing up all this weight, and then fucking Urkel comes over and goes, I got this. And it's like, I don't think you got this. And sure enough, Urkel doesn't got it, and it almost dies. And then there's another part. He's like, oh, I got this special juicer that juices anything. And then the juicer goes haywire and sprays juice everywhere. So the jokes and the scenarios are kind of very standard for a sitcom. Like I said, it's not really elaborate or very creative. The characters, though, like I said, Jaleel White does an okay job as that kind of fun little side character. So the family themselves, which, as I said, when I mentioned before, like, it's weird that certain people on the show reference him as the Big Show, but like, the family is still the White family. Like, there's a teacher or two that refer to him as Mr. and Mrs. White. So it's like, wait, why do people refer to him as Big Show, but then also as Mr. White? It's such an odd thing. But then some of the side characters, like they kind of do a bad job on some of the character descriptions, at least in the pilot episode. Like, for example, that first episode, I didn't even know his wife was a real estate agent until like the second episode, and then you're like, oh, that's what she was referring to. Like, it wasn't very well done. Some of the kids, the daughters, are actually pretty entertaining. They're okay. There's one, like, the eldest daughter is kind of the cool daughter sort of thing, and then the middle daughter is kind of more politically driven, kind of stuff like that. And then the youngest daughter is essentially Bart Simpson. More or less, she's the troublemaker kind of thing. She's the one that's like, don't have a cow, man. Like, the show definitely gives her those like one-liners and stuff like that, which I think don't work, especially for a kid that young, because she's supposed to be like an 8-year-old, and it's kind of like, it's more like, all right, yeah, you're definitely being fed those lines. It doesn't seem organic. But then, like as I said, some of the story arcs are not very entertaining, or they don't really go anywhere. It's the whole show for the most part is very paint by numbers. There are some clever jokes here and there. Like, for example, there's one student in the school where the middle daughter, like, she's running for like class president, and her opponent is a black kid named Taylor Swift. And one of which is funny, because then he gives like a speech to the student body, the whole student body, and he's pretty much, his speech is all Taylor Swift songs, which is pretty silly. And I go, okay, so like, and then certain characters are kind of fun here and there. So like, there is some potential for this show. I just think, to be honest with you, I feel like this show, It was definitely filmed a while ago, and I think they didn't know when they wanted to release it, because, as I mentioned before with my wrestling knowledge, I kind of know that the Big Show, currently the Big Show has lost a lot of weight, has gotten very fit. He's even got abs, which is very good for him. But it looks like, based on how he looks physically on this show, this is definitely when he was very soggy in the middle. So they definitely pretty much what it was is they filmed this show at some point in time, maybe 4 years ago, just sat on it, and then we're just waiting for a time to release it, if whatever they could. And to be honest with you, during this whole quarantine, better chance than never kind of thing. So at least it'll get some eyes here and there. But at the end of the day, as I said, it's very paint by numbers. I wouldn't recommend it to wrestling fans, even general audiences. As I said, maybe as a wrestling fan, if you have a passing interest, you like the Big Show, sure, give it a try, give it a few episodes. But unless they get a better writing staff in this, if they're going to make a second season of this, because it's only 8 episodes, and I think they're only 30 minutes each. Unless they get if they get a better writing staff for this, maybe there's some potential to kind of play off of more wrestlers or more inside humor of wrestling, or maybe get WWE's involvement a little bit more, because I think that's also kind of another weird thing that especially Vince McMahon is very kind of handsy. Not, I don't want to say handsy, but he's very in tune with his material, and he is very particular about how certain things are represented. I just felt like maybe for this, he just probably didn't give a shit, and it was just like, whatever, just film whatever and release it whenever. I don't care. So I would say if they got a better writing staff to do this, because Paul White is a very entertaining character. He's a very charismatic guy, and I think he could carry a show like this. I just think they just kind of paid him as too much of a dummy. The characters, like the situations they're in, are not very elaborate, very creative, and it's just kind of very standard, sitcom schlock kind of thing. But anyway, so that's my first reaction. Stay tuned. We definitely have more to come. And then obviously stay tuned for our Friday shows and the like. So thank you, and check you later.